All right, let's uncork this deep dive and talk all things Portuguese wine. Today, the star of the show is Baga, and, it's one of those grapes that has a bit of a mystique. We're going to figure out what makes it so special, what makes it so demanding for winemakers to work with, and why people are going crazy for it right now.
Yeah, what really gets me about Bagag, and I think you'll agree, is it's not just a grape from Portugal. It's like it's intertwined with this specific region, Bairrada.
Bairrada, got it. So, like, more than just geography, it's kind of like a cultural icon.
Exactly. Think of, those picture-perfect vineyards cascading down to the Atlantic, generations of families literally wrestling these vines into submission.
Yeah.
It's a story, not just a grape. You know what I mean?
Totally. Okay, so Bairrada. Our sources are pretty clear that it's more than just a pretty backdrop. Those Atlantic breezes, that clay and limestone soil, it's like Burgos' ideal habitat almost.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a perfect marriage. Bairrada is like this, well, maybe not gentle, but the perfect environment for Baga to make those, powerful, strong wines. They have a personality, let's just say that.
Okay, so now I'm even more intrigued. Let's talk about Baga itself. Like, on a vine level, what makes it so unique, so demanding?
Well, it all comes back to the grape itself, right? Those thick skins, they're like armor, and they're loaded with tannins, which are the compounds that give wines structure and that ability to age well.
I think I read somewhere that those tannins can be a bit like a wild horse, hard to tame.
Oh, that's the great analogy. They can be, for sure.
Mm.
It takes a skilled winemaker, someone who really understands Baga, to kind of coax those tannins into balance. If they're not managed right, the wines can be, well, a little rough around the edges.
I can imagine. So, not a grape for beginners, huh? I feel like I'd be pacing the vineyard waiting for these things to ripen.
Patience is key with Baga. It's a late ripener, takes its sweet time compared to other varieties.
Mhm.
That can be a nail biter for growers in cooler years or if there's a lot of rain. But when everything lines up, it's magic. That slow ripening gives the grapes this depth, this complexity that you just don't find everywhere.
High stakes, high reward. But we're talking about more than just those big reds, right? Saw mention of sparkling baga, even rosé.
Exactly. Baga is way more versatile than people give it credit for. It can be made into a whole range of styles, from those light fruity reds you'd enjoy any day of the week to those ones you tuck away in the cellar and forget about for a decade. And yeah, the sparkling wines and rosés, they're starting to get some attention, and deservedly so. They're really interesting.
Hold on. So baga is the main event in Bairrada, but does it ever show up in other parts of Portugal?
It does. It does. Think of it like a guest star popping up in regions like Down or Lisbon, bringing its unique flavor to the party.
Okay, that makes sense. So, not a one-trick pony. Which makes me even more curious about these different personalities. Let's start with those young reds. What are we tasting there?
Think bright, juicy, with those fresh red fruit aromas like cherry and raspberry, maybe even a touch of strawberry. That vibrant acidity, the hallmark of Baga, just sings in these wines. They're perfect for like a casual meal or just sipping on a patio.
I'm sold. But all right, let's get to the good stuff. The age-worthy wines. What happens there?
Oh, that's where Baga gets really, really interesting. As it ages, those tannins start to mellow out, they integrate, and then all these new aromas and flavors start to emerge, like dark fruits, plums, blackberries, spices, even hints of leather and tobacco. Like, think of it like a story unfolding. Every year in the bottle adds another chapter.
That's poetic.
Hmm.
And the sparkling bugger seems kind of unexpected, right? Given how bold those red wines can be.
I thought so too at first. But it totally makes sense when you think about it. All that natural acidity and those complex aromas, they're perfect for sparkling wine.
Mm.
And the best producers, they use the traditional method, the same way they make champagne.
Oh, so we're talking serious bubbly here. What about rosé? Can Baga even do rosé?
Oh, yeah. And it's surprisingly good. Baga rosés are dry, crisp, and loaded with fruit strawberries, watermelon, even a hint of rose petal. They're great for anyone who wants a rosé that's both refreshing and interesting.
Okay, sold. But we got to address the elephant in the room. This difficult to grow thing. What's the deal with that?
Those thick skins we were just praising? They come with a price. Managing those tannins, getting them just right. It's a high wire act for the winemaker. If you extract too much, the wine can be harsh. But if you don't extract enough, you lose all that Baga character. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Sounds like a tightrope walk. And what about the late ripening, constant stress for the growers? Or is there an upside?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially with the way the climate's been acting lately. But when the conditions cooperate, that late ripening is what gives Baga those incredible flavors. You just got to be patient. It's like the old saying, right? Good things come to those who wait.
So it's all about balance, that perfect moment of ripeness. I mean, I gotta imagine climate change is throwing a wrench in things too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge concern for baga growers.
Yeah.
Temperatures are rising, weather patterns are more unpredictable. It's tough. You've got intense heat waves, sudden frosts, even sunburn on the grapes. It's a real threat to the future of this amazing grape.
That's worrying, but I'm also sensing a bit of maybe fighting spirit from these growers. What are they doing to kind of, push back against these challenges?
They're getting creative. Some are trying out different baga clones that are maybe a bit more adapted to warmer conditions. And there's a big push towards sustainable viticulture, farming practices that help the vines thrive even when things get tough.
It's a battle on all fronts. But going back to those thick skins for a second, we talked about tannins. Are there any other maybe downsides to those tough exteriors?
Hmm. Well, they're great for protecting the grapes, but they can also make baga more susceptible to fungal diseases, especially in damp climates. It's just another hurdle for the growers to overcome.
It's a dance with nature, right? Balancing those challenges, protecting the grapes. Okay, but what about the market? Has Baga always been this sought after, or is there something else going on?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. Baga's having a moment, you could say. It was kind of overlooked for a while, overshadowed by some of those bigger, more international grapes. But now, people are starting to rediscover it. They're realizing just how special it is.
I like a good comeback story. What do you think is driving this newfound appreciation?
I think people are just more, well, adventurous with their wine choices now. They're looking for something different, something with character and a story.
Hmm.
And Baga ticks all those boxes. It's not just a wine, it's an experience.
It really is. It's like a journey into Portuguese history and terroir. But let's go back to those DOCs for a second. We were talking about Bairrada being like Baga's home turf. Can you paint us a picture of what makes this region so special for this grape?
Picture rolling hills, vineyards everywhere, and that Atlantic Ocean just right there. And the soil, that clay and limestone, it really shapes the character of the Baga grown here.
And those Bairrada sparkling wines made with Baga, they're like a secret weapon. It's almost surprising, considering how bold the reds can be.
Right. But they're getting more and more popular. A lot of producers are really focusing on quality, using those traditional methods, and the results are fantastic.
All right, so serious bubbly. What about Doan DOC? We talked about how Baga kind of plays a supporting role there, blending with other grapes. Which ones does it hang out with the most?
Well, in Down, Bagaga is kind of a team player. It blends really well with grapes like Touriga Nacional, Tinta Roriz, it's also known as Aragonés, and Alfroquero. Each of those grapes brings something different to the table, creating these really complex wines that can age beautifully.
It's like a Portuguese wine supergroup. All right, but Lisbon DOC, that seems like a whole different scene. What's going on with Baga in that region?
Lisbon is all about pushing boundaries, experimenting with different grapes, trying new things, and Baga is finding its place there too. It's exciting to see how winemakers are using it to add a new dimension to their wines.
It sounds like Baga is really making its mark in Lisbon, adding its unique personality to a region that's already known for its amazing wines. But for someone just starting out with Baga, are there any specific regions or producers we should be on the lookout for?
Great question. Bairrada is the obvious place to start if you want to experience the pure essence of Baga. But don't overlook Dom for those interesting blends. And in Lisbon, keep an eye out for producers who are really pushing the envelope with Baga, showcasing its versatility.
It's a Baga treasure hunt. But with so many different styles and regions, it can be overwhelming, right? What are some things to look for on a wine label when you're trying to navigate the world of Baga?
If you want a classic Bairrada Baga, look for bottles that say Bairrada DOC, and that list 100% Baga. If you're into blends, pay attention to the other grapes that are mentioned. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Your local wine shop or the sommelier can point you in the right direction.
Knowledge is power. But let's get back to the wines themselves. What are some of those defining characteristics of Baga? What are the flavors and aromas that really set it apart?
Baga's got this vibrant acidity that just makes the wine sing. And then there are those tannins, which can be pretty powerful, especially in the younger wines. But it's those aromas that really grab, you think, dark fruits like blackberry and plum, earthy notes, and this incredible spice.
It's a whole sensory experience.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about food. Baga seems like it would be a dream pairing with so many dishes.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fantastic food wine. That acidity and those tannins cut through rich foods like nobody's business. Think roasted meats, game, hearty stews.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it, but what about the lighter styles of Baga? What would you pair those with?
Those younger, fruitier ones are great with grilled fish, chicken, pork, anything with a tomato-based sauce. And don't forget the rosés. They're perfect for summertime meals, salads, grilled veggies, that kind of thing.
Okay, so there's a baga for every occasion. But let's talk about those age-worthy wines for a second. What kind of transformation can we expect when we tuck those bottles away for a few years?
Oh, aging baga is like watching a flower bloom in slow motion. Those tannins soften up, the fruit becomes more concentrated, and those complex aromas just intensify. It's amazing.
It's a wine that tells a story, and every year just adds another layer of complexity. I love that.
Exactly. That's what makes baga so captivating. The one that rewards patience and invites you to really savor its evolution.
I'm on board. So we've covered a lot, from the history and terroir of Baga to the challenges and triumphs of growing this unique grape. But I have to ask, what is it about Baga that makes it so special, so different from other wines?
You know, for me, it's that sense of place, that connection to history and tradition. You can taste it in every sip. Baga is a wine that truly embodies the spirit of Portugal.
It's like a liquid embodiment of Portuguese culture. That's perfect. But let's shift gears and talk about the future. What are some of the trends and innovations shaping the way Baga is being produced and enjoyed?
Sustainability is a big focus right now. More and more baga producers are embracing organic and biodynamic farming practices. And people are also getting really interested in exploring different baga clones and the impact of terroir, which is leading to even more diversity in the styles of baga wines.
So Baga is evolving but staying true to its roots. What about its potential internationally? Do you think it's got what it takes to become the next big thing?
I think it has huge potential. Baga is a wine that can appeal to a wide range of palates. And as people become more adventurous with their wine choices, I think we're going to see Baga gaining more and more recognition worldwide.
All right, great news for Baga lovers. So last question for this part of our deep dive. Imagine you're introducing Baga to someone who's never tried it before. What would you say to get them excited, to make them want to grab a bottle?
I think it's all about highlighting what we've been talking about. That incredible depth of flavor, the way it ages, and that deep connection to Portuguese culture. I might say something like, imagine a wine that's both powerful and elegant, with flavors that unfold like a good book. That's Baga.
I like it. It's like a movie trailer for Baga. But let's get practical. Where should someone start their Baga adventure?
Bairrada, hands down. It's Baga's heartland, and you'll find a huge range of styles to try. From those classic age-worthy reds to the lighter, fruitier wines, and even those fantastic sparkling wines. It's the perfect Baga 101.
Okay, Bairrada it is. But what about those blends? Are there any regions or producers that stand out for blending Baga with other Portuguese varieties?
Down's a great place to explore blends. Baga often plays a supporting role there, but it adds structure and complexity to those wines made with Touriga Nacional and Tinto Roriz. Look for producers known for making those really balanced, elegant wines. They usually know how to make the most of Baga in a blend.
It's like a winemaker's puzzle, finding that perfect combo of grapes. And Lisbon. Is it worth checking out for Baga blends?
Lisbon. That's where things get really interesting. You'll find some winemakers using Baga to add structure to wines made with international varieties, and others are doing these really unconventional blends that showcase Baga's versatility. It's a region for the adventurous wine lover, for sure.
So we've got Bairrada for the purists, Down for the blend enthusiasts, and Lisbon for those who like to walk on the wild side. But let's talk about the tasting experience itself. What should we be looking for when we swirl, sniff, and sip a glass of Baga?
First, check out the color. Baga wines tend to be pretty dark, even the younger ones, with colors ranging from ruby to deep garnet. And on the nose, you're going to get those dark fruit aromas, blackberries, plums, maybe even a hint of black cherry. And then there's that Baga spice black pepper, sometimes clove or licorice. It's really distinctive.
Wow, sounds amazing. And what about on the palate?
You'll notice that high acidity right away, which gives Baga its vibrancy. And then the tannins kick in, and those can be quite firm in the younger wines, but they soften and integrate as the wine ages. And then, of course, there's that incredible depth of flavor, all those dark fruits, often layered with earthy notes, spice, and sometimes even a hint of minerality or smoke.
It's a wine that engages all the senses. But let's get back to food pairing for a second. We touched on this earlier, but can we dive into some specific examples of dishes that would pair well with Baga?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For those classic, age-worthy Bairrada Bagas, you want something hearty. Roasted lamb, grilled steak, game stews. The tannins in the wine will cut through the richness of the meat, and those complex flavors will complement the savory notes.
My mouth is watering. What about the lighter, fruitier Baga wines?
Those are great with grilled fish. especially oily fish like salmon or tuna, chicken, pork, pasta with tomato sauce. And don't forget about Baga Rosé, perfect for summer evenings, salads, grilled vegetables, or even spicy Asian dishes.
So we've gone from vine to bottle, from history and terroir to flavors and food pairings. I feel like we've truly uncovered the secrets of Baga. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you. If you could sum up the essence of Baga in just a few words, what would they be?
That's a tough one. But I think I'd say the Baga is powerful, yet elegant, complex, yet approachable. It's a wine that's steeped in tradition, but constantly evolving. It's a wine that reflects the heart and soul of Portugal.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. To all our listeners out there, I encourage you to seek out and experience the magic of Baga for yourselves. It's a wine that will surprise you, challenge you, and ultimately reward you. You might just discover your new favorite wine. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, cheers to the wonderful world of wine.
It can be, yeah. Especially, with the weather these days. But if everything goes right, that late ripening, that's what gives a Baga those flavors. It's worth the wait.
It's all about those little wins, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to ask, climate change got to be impacting things, right? I mean, it's everywhere.
Oh, for sure. It's a huge worry for anyone growing Baga. The
Mm-hmm.
temperature's going up, the weather's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation for those vines, heat waves, frost, even sunburn on the grapes. It's wild.
That's scary stuff, but I'm hearing this this resilience too, right? What are these growers doing? Are they just like throwing their hands up, or is there something else going on?
No way. They're getting creative. Some are trying out different Baga clones that maybe handle the heat a bit better. And then you've got this whole movement towards sustainable viticulture.
Yeah.
Trying to help the vines stay healthy, even with all this crazy weather.
Fighting the good fight. Going back to those thick skins for a minute, we were talking about the tannins being tricky. Are there any other downsides to those tough little grapes?
Well, they're good at protecting the grapes. But it also makes Baga a bit more prone to fungal diseases, especially in damper climates. Just another thing for those growers to deal with.
It's a constant battle, right? Protecting the grapes, working with nature. Okay, but let's talk market for a second. Has Baga always been this popular, or what's the deal?
Funny you should say that because Baga's having a bit of a moment right now. It was kind of in the shadows for a while, overshadowed by some of those big international grapes. But now people are starting to rediscover it.
I'm all about a good comeback story. What do you think is driving that?
I think people are just more willing to try new things now. They're looking for wines with character and a story. And Baga definitely has that. It's not just a drink, it's an experience.
It really is like you're tasting history, right? But let's circle back to those DOCs we were talking about earlier. Bairrada, we said that's Baga's home turf. Can you break that down a bit more? What makes it so perfect for this grape?
Imagine rolling hills covered in vineyards in the Atlantic Ocean right there. And that soil, the clay and limestone, really makes the Baga from Bairrada unique.
And those Bairrada sparkling wines made with Baga, they're like a hidden gem. It's almost unexpected, right? With those big, bold reds.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But they're definitely gaining in popularity. Lots of producers are focusing on quality using traditional methods, and the results are impressive.
So we're talking real deal sparkling wine, not just something for a Tuesday night. What about Don DOC? We said Baga plays a supporting role there, blending with other grapes. Which ones are its usual partners?
And Don Baga is a bit of a command. It blends really well with the local stars there. Touriga National, Tintoreries, you might know that one as Aragones and Alfrochero. They all bring something different to the mix, and you end up with these really complex wines that can age for a long time.
A Portuguese wine supergroup. I love it. Okay. But Lisbon DOC, that feels different. What's driving Baga's presence there?
Lisbon's wine scene is all about innovation, pushing boundaries, and Baga's fitting right in. They're experimenting with it, using it to add a new layer to their wines. It's pretty cool to see.
Sounds like Baga's finding its footing in Lisbon, bringing something new to a region that's already making waves, right? So for a Baga newbie, are there any specific regions or producers to look out for?
That's a great question. If you want to try Baga in its purest form, Bairrada is the place to start. But don't sleep on Dom for those blends. And in Lisbon, keep an eye out for those producers who are really doing interesting things with Baga, showcasing its versatility.
It's a Baga treasure hunt. Okay. But with all these different styles and regions, it can be a lot. What should we be looking for on the label when we're trying to figure out what's what?
Good question. If you're looking for that classic Bairrada Baga, look for Bairrada DOC on the label and make sure it says 100% Baga. If you're interested in blends, check out the other grapes they mention. And don't be shy about asking for recommendations. Your local wine shop or a sommelier that can point you in the right direction.
So knowledge is key. The more you know about Baga, the more you'll get out of it. But let's talk about the wine itself. What are some of those hallmarks of Baga? What are we tasting? What are we smelling?
Baga is known for its acidity. It just gives the wines this brightness, this energy. And then there are those tannins we talked about, which can be pretty big, especially when the wines are young. And then those aromas, dark fruits like blackberry and plum, earthy notes, this amazing spice.
Sounds like a symphony of flavors, and we can't forget about pairing it with food, right? Baga seems like it would be a perfect match for so many dishes.
Oh, it's a food lover's dream. That acidity and those tannins, they cut right through rich foods, roasted meats, game stews, you name it.
Man, I'm getting hungry. But what about those lighter styles of Baga? What would you pair those with?
Those younger, fruitier bagas, they're awesome with grilled fish, especially those oily fish like salmon or tuna chicken pork pasta with tomato sauce and the rosés, perfect for summer salads, grilled veggies, even spicy Asian food.
All right, so there's a Baga for every occasion. But let's talk about those age-worthy wines for a second. What kind of magic happens when you let those bottles sit for a while?
Aging baga is an experience. Those tannins, they mellow out, the fruit gets more intense, and those complex aromas, they really come alive. It's pretty special.
It's a wine that evolves, right? Every year adds something new. I love that.
Exactly. It's what makes baga so interesting. It rewards you for your patience, and it invites you to really take your time and enjoy it.
I'm sold. All right, so we've covered a lot here, the history, the terroir, the challenges, the triumphs of growing Baga. But I have to ask, what makes Baga so special, so unique compared to other wines?
For me, it's that sense of place, that connection to Portugal's history and traditions. You can taste it in every glass. It's like a little piece of Portugal in a bottle.
It's the liquid embodiment of Portuguese culture. I love that. But let's look ahead for a minute. What's going on in the world of Baga? What are some of the trends and innovations that are shaping how it's being made and enjoyed?
One of the big things right now is sustainability, more and more. Baga producers are going organic and biodynamic, and people are really interested in experimenting with different Baga clones and exploring the impact of terroir. So we're seeing even more variety in the styles of Baga being made.
Baga is evolving, but staying true to its roots. That's great to hear. What about its potential on a global scale? Do you think Baga has what it takes to become the next big thing?
I think it absolutely does. Baga has this unique character, this ability to age gracefully, and it's so versatile with food. I think it can appeal to a lot of different people. And as people become more adventurous with their wine, I think we're going to see Baga getting a lot more attention worldwide.
That's exciting news for Baga lovers. All right, last question for this part of our deep dive. If you were introducing Baga to someone who's never tried it before, what would you say to get them excited about it?
It's all about making it sound irresistible, right? I think you got to play up those key points we've been hitting all along, that depth of flavor, how it gets even better with age and that connection to Portugal,
Yeah.
the culture, the land. I might say something like, imagine a wine that's powerful, but also elegant with flavors that just keep unfolding. It's like reading a great book. That's Baga.
Ooh, I like that. A little teaser trailer for a Baga movie.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's get down to business. Someone's ready to jump into the world of Baga. Where do they even start?
Baga is the place to go. It's like Baga's origin story. You'll
Yeah.
find all sorts of styles there, from those classic age-worthy reds to the lighter, fruitier ones, and even those amazing sparkling wines. It's the perfect introduction to Baga.
Baga 101. I love it. But what about those blends? Are there any regions or producers that are really killing it with blending Baga with those other Portuguese grapes?
Dom's definitely worth checking out for blends. Baga often plays more of a supporting role there, adding some structure and complexity to those wines made with Touriga Nacional and Tinta Roriz. Look for those producers who are known for making those elegant, well-balanced wines. They tend to really understand how to use Baga in a blend.
It's like winemaking alchemy, right? Finding that perfect blend of grapes and then Lisbon. Is it worth venturing into that region for Baga blends?
Lisbon's a little more unpredictable, but that's part of the fun. Some winemakers there are using Baga to give some backbone to wines made with international varieties, while others are playing around with these really unique blends that really highlight Baga's versatility. It's a good place to explore if you're feeling adventurous.
Okay, so we've got Bairrada for the purists, Down for the blend lovers, and Lisbon for those who like to live on the edge. But let's break down the actual tasting experience. What should we be paying attention to when we finally get that glass of Baga in our hands?
First thing, take a look at the color. Baga wines are usually pretty dark, even the young ones, with colors ranging from ruby to that deep garnet color. And when you smell it, you'll get those dark fruit aromas, blackberries, plums, maybe a little black cherry, and then there's that signature Baga spice that black pepper, maybe even a hint of clove or licorice.
It's a whole sensory journey, all right? And what about when we actually take a sip?
You're going to notice that acidity right away gives Baga this really lively, refreshing quality. And then you'll feel those tannins, which can be pretty firm in the younger wines, but they get smoother and more integrated as the wine ages. And then there's that amazing depth of flavor, all those dark fruits we were talking about, plus some earthy notes, spice, and sometimes even a touch of minerality or smokiness.
It's a wine that keeps on giving, but we can't forget about the food pairing. What are some specific dishes that would be amazing with Baga?
For those big, bold, age-worthy Bairrada Bagas, you want something that can stand up to them. Roasted lamb, grilled steak, a rich game stew. Yeah. The tannins in the wine will cut right through that richness, and the flavors will complement those savory notes.
I'm so hungry right now. What about those lighter, fruitier Bagas, though?
Those are awesome with grilled fish,
Hmm.
especially those oily ones like salmon or tuna chicken, pork pasta with tomato sauce, and of course Baga Rosé, perfect for summer salads, grilled veggies, or even something spicy like Asian food.
So many options. Okay, we've gone from the vineyard to the bottle, from the history and the land to the flavors and the food. I feel like we've really gotten to know Baga, but before we wrap things up, I have to ask you one last question. If you had to sum up the essence of Baga in just a few words, what would they be?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I think I'd say Baga is powerful, yet elegant, complex, but still approachable. It's rooted in tradition, but always evolving. It's a wine that truly captures the spirit of Portugal.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I think that's the perfect way to end this deep dive into the world of Baga. So, to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to go out and experience this amazing wine for yourselves. It's a wine that will surprise you, challenge you, and ultimately reward you with its incredible depth and complexity. Who knows, you might just discover your new favorite wine. Cheers to the wonderful world of wine.